What happens when a man tries to destroy the one person who was holding his entire world together? Marcus Reed thought his wife Seraphina was just a simple, quiet accessory. He was so wrong. He decided to flaunt his mistress in a flashy new car at the biggest event of the year, a public humiliation designed to break her. But he forgot one crucial detail: you never ever underestimate the quiet ones. Because when Seraphina finally made her move, she didn't just show up. She arrived, in a pitch-black Rolls-Royce with men who don't take no for an answer. This isn't just a breakup story. It's a corporate annihilation. The ballroom at the Four Seasons was suffocating. It wasn't the press of bodies glittering in couture and dripping with Cartier that choked Seraphina Sarah Reed. It was the heavy, cloying scent of cheap ambition and old money. Her husband, Marcus, was across the room holding court. He was a shark in a Tom Ford tuxedo, and he was tasting blood, just not in the way he thought. Sarah watched him from behind a pillar, nursing a glass of champagne that had long gone flat. She'd been married to Marcus for 8 years. 8 years of dimming her own light so his could shine. He loved telling people he was a self-made man, the CEO of a fast-rising tech firm, Reed Dynamics. He loved to forget that her little inheritance had been the seed money, the money he'd promised to pay back and never had. "There you are," Marcus hissed, appearing at her elbow. His smile was plastered on, but his eyes were chips of ice. "What are you doing hiding? You're making me look bad. Go mingle. At least try to look like you belong here." I don't care," he snapped, adjusting his Richard Mille watch, a $300,000 bonus he'd given himself last quarter, even as she saw their joint accounts dwindling. "I have to handle a major client. I need you to be the perfect wife. Is that too much to ask?" He didn't wait for an answer, just strode back into the fray. Sarah felt the familiar sting. She was the boring wife, the simple wife. She wore a deep emerald gown by a designer so exclusive he didn't advertise. But to Marcus it wasn't flashy enough. It wasn't sheer. It wasn't what other men's wives were wearing. An hour later, the keynote speech was droning on when Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and for a split second, a genuine wolfish grin crossed his face. He quickly composed himself, leaned over to Sarah and whispered, "Emergency at the office. A server farm in Utah just went down. I have to go." Sarah's blood went cold. A server farm at 10 p.m. on a Saturday. "You wouldn't understand, Sarah. It's business." He patted her hand dismissively. "You stay. Enjoy the party. I'll have my driver pick you up." He was gone before she could say another word. He didn't just leave. He fled like a man escaping a trap. She knew he was lying. The server farm in Utah had been sold off 6 months ago to cover a payroll deficit he'd tried to hide from her. Sarah stood for a moment, the room tilting. She felt the eyes of the other wives on her, the pity, the smug speculation. There goes poor abandoned Sarah Reed. She walked not to her table but to the exit, her head held high. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She reached the grand marble-floored lobby and saw through the revolving doors the valet line. She was about to ask for her car, a modest, practical Audi, when she heard a laugh. It was a high-pitched feminine giggle that cut through the night. And then she saw him. It was Marcus. He wasn't in his usual chauffeured sedan. He was leaning against a car, so new, so loud, it was practically screaming. A highlighter yellow Lamborghini Aventador. In the passenger seat, legs crossed, was Chloe Jensen, a junior marketing analyst from Marcus's office, barely 24, with hair the color of bleach and a dress that looked glued on. They weren't leaving. They were arriving. Late. Together. to the same event he had just fled. Chloe posted a selfie to her Instagram story, the flash illuminating her ecstatic face. The caption, "Finally get to play with the big boys," arriving in style with the one and only. Marcus saw Sarah standing there, frozen in the lobby. His face didn't register shame or shock. It settled into a mask of pure, cold arrogance. He sauntered over, leaving Chloe to preen in the car. "Sarah," he said, his voice loud enough for the valets and the departing guests to hear. "What are you doing lurking in the garage? I thought I told you to stay inside." You lied," she whispered the words, getting stuck in her throat. "I finalized a deal," he boomed. "Chloe, Ms. Jensen was instrumental. We're here to celebrate. You know real business. You wouldn't understand." He tossed his keys to the stunned head valet. "The Lambo, front and center." He turned back to Sarah, his eyes sweeping over her with utter disdain. "Why don't you just take your little Audi and go home? The adults need to network. This party just got interesting." He turned his back on her, offered his arm to Chloe, who was now strutting toward him, and they walked into the ballroom together, a triumphant king and his new shiny queen. Sarah was left standing in the exhaust fumes, the sound of their laughter echoing in her ears. The humiliation was a physical burning thing. It was complete. Sarah did not go home. She did not take her Audi. She walked past the valet stand, her heels clicking with a sharp, precise rhythm on the pavement. She walked 1 block, then 2, the cold November air biting at her cheeks, clearing the fog of shock and replacing it with something else. A cold, hard clarity. She'd given him 8 years. 8 years of support, of silence, of her own brilliance simmering on a back burner until it had nearly gone out. She had propped up his fragile ego, signed over her own trust fund dividends to invest in his failing company, and believed or wanted to believe his lies, all because she had loved the man he'd pretended to be. The humiliation at the gala wasn't the first cut. It was just the final, fatal one. He hadn't just cheated. He hadn't just lied. He had tried to erase her, to make her small, to publicly declare her worthless. He had forgotten who she was. She stopped on a quiet, gas-lit side street, blocks away from the hotel's bustle. She pulled her phone from her clutch. It wasn't the one Marcus tracked. This was a clean, encrypted satellite phone she'd had for years. She scrolled to a single number, a name that hadn't been spoken in her house for almost a decade. She pressed the call button. It rang twice. "It's done," a man's voice answered. No hello, just readiness. Aris Sarah said, her voice perfectly level, the tremble completely gone. He did it. The gala. He brought her. There was a pause, a deep, heavy sigh from the other end. "Seraphina, I am so sorry you had to endure that." "I'm past sorry, Aris. I'm at ready. Is the protocol still in place?" "It has never been stood down, ma'am. The Davenport contingency. Your father's instructions were very clear." Sarah flinched. Her father. The one man she'd truly defied. Seraphina Davenport Reed, the sole heir to the Davenport Holdings empire, a global logistics and private equity dynasty, so old and so quiet it made new money, like Marcus, look like a child playing in a sandbox. She had fallen in love with Marcus Reed, a charismatic, ambitious nobody, and had chosen him over her family. Her father, a titan of industry, had given her an ultimatum. If you marry that parasite, you are no longer a Davenport. Your access is cut. You are on your own. So she had walked away. What she hadn't told her father, and what Marcus never knew, was that her grandmother had left her a separate, massive inheritance in a blind trust, managed by the one man her father had fired for being too loyal to her Aris Thorne. Aris had been her father's head of security, an ex-MI6 operative with a mind for numbers. When he was dismissed, Sarah had used her inheritance to set him up as the head of a private equity firm, Thorne Capital, a firm that had, over the last 8 years, been quietly and legally acquiring the debt of failing tech companies exactly like Reed Dynamics. "Marcus thinks he's a king heiress," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "He thinks he's self-made. He's forgotten that I've been the one signing the checks, filtering my own money through 3 shell corporations just to make his payroll." "He is arrogant and he is a fool," Aris said. "And he is about to be a very poor fool. What are your orders, Seraphina?" "The protocol. The full one. He's called a meeting with his lawyers for Monday. He's going to try and divorce me, leave me with nothing. He thinks he's in control." "And where would you like this meeting to take place?" Aris asked. "He'll book a neutral conference room at his lawyer's firm. Snyder, Pike and Associates. A third-rate shark tank. It's on the 30th floor of the Kelleher building." "I know it," Aris said. "And your arrival." Sarah looked up at the night sky. The humiliation was still there, a hot ember in her chest. But now it wasn't a fire of shame, it was a forge. "He left me in the exhaust fumes of a Lamborghini Aris. He called my car little. He thinks I'll show up in a taxi begging for scraps." She took a deep breath. "I want the Phantom, the black one. And I want the security detail, the full detail, not the showy ones, the ones who look like they can break a man's arm without spilling their coffee. I want you there, at the door." "It will be a pleasure, Ms. Davenport," Aris said. The Ms. Davenport was intentional. The Reed part of her life was over. "And Aris, yes, call Harriet Shaw. Tell her it's time. I want her at the head of the table when I walk in. I want Marcus's lawyer to see the ghost of God walk in." A low chuckle. "Harriet Shaw, he'll need a new set of trousers. Consider it done. We will pick you up at 800 Monday. Be ready." "I'm ready now," Sarah said, and ended the call. She looked at her reflection in the dark window of a closed bakery. The boring wife was gone. In her place was Seraphina Davenport, and she was coming to collect. Monday morning, 8:45 a.m. The offices of Snyder, Pike and Associates were a monument to aggressive mediocrity. The lobby was all chrome black leather and glass designed to intimidate small-time clients and impress fools. Marcus Reed was in his element. He had spent the entire weekend in a haze of triumph. The gala had been his coronation. He had his arm Candy Chloe, who was currently waiting in the lobby sipping a latte and taking selfies, and he had his power. He'd even bought a new car on Sunday, a gleaming deep blue Bentley Continental GT. He'd parked it right out front in the 10-minute loading zone, daring a tow truck to try. He was in the main conference room on the 30th floor, looking down at the city, a smog-stained kingdom he was convinced he ruled. His lawyer, Rick Snyder, a man with a comb-over and a predatory grin, was shuffling papers. "It's clean, Marcus. Airtight," Snyder said, tapping a document. "The prenup is ironclad. She gets her personal effects, the Audi, and the alimony we discussed. A one-time payment of $50,000. It's generous, really, considering she didn't do anything for 8 years. Generous is my middle name," Marcus scoffed. "She's lucky she's getting that. The woman has no ambition. You should have seen her at the gala, hiding by the ferns. An embarrassment." "And this other woman," Chloe, Snyder asked, lowering his voice. "What about her? She's an asset. She knows how to network. She's what a real partner looks like." "Just make sure she stays in the lobby," Snyder advised. "Optics, you know. We want Sarah to sign this quick and quiet. We'll paint it as a kindness. Marcus wants you to be free to find your own happiness, blah blah blah. Whatever. Just get it done," Marcus said, checking his watch. "She's late. Typical. Probably trying to figure out the bus schedule. Snyder laughed, a wheezing sound. She'll be in, she'll cry, she'll sign. They always do. By noon, you'll be a free man, Marcus. Richer and free. Richer, Marcus repeated, liking the sound of it. He looked back out the window. So where is the little woman? The words died in his throat. Down on the street, 30 floors below, something was wrong. The morning traffic on the busy financial district street was slowing, parting like the Red Sea. A car was coming through. But it wasn't a car. It was a presence. A gloss-black, monolithic Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to the curb. It was so black, it seemed to drink the light around it. Its engine was utterly silent. It stopped directly behind Marcus's illegally parked Bentley, dwarfing it, making it look like a cheap toy. "What the hell is that?" Snyder said, moving to the window, as they watched a black Cadillac Escalade, just as silent, pulled up behind the Rolls. The doors of the Escalade opened, and 2 men emerged. They were not drivers. They were tall, broad, and dressed in identical, severe, dark suits with earpieces. They didn't open the door. They scanned the street, the building, the rooftops. Their eyes were cold, professional. They moved with an economy of motion that screamed danger. One of them nodded. A third man who had been driving the Escalade stepped out. He was different. He was in his late 50s, impeccably dressed in a Savile Row suit with silver hair and an aura of absolute command. This was Aris Thorne. Aris walked to the Rolls-Royce, ignoring the small crowd of pedestrians that had started to gather. He didn't open the door. He waited. Inside the conference room, Marcus was gripping the windowsill. "Who is that? Is that a politician? Did she call someone? I don't know." Snyder stammered, his confidence evaporating. Down on the street, Aris opened the rear door of the Phantom. A single, elegant, leather-soled heel stepped out onto the pavement. Seraphina Davenport emerged. She was not the woman from the gala. This was not the boring wife. She was wearing a razor-sharp, custom-tailored navy blue power suit. Her hair, which she usually wore in a simple, modest bun, was down, styled in a sleek, powerful wave that fell over one shoulder. Her face was serene, her makeup flawless, her expression unreadable. She looked like a queen surveying a territory that had just been reconquered. She stood for a second, letting the 2 security men flank the building's entrance before walking toward the revolving doors. Aris was half a step behind her, a protective, menacing shadow. In the lobby, Chloe Jensen was touching up her lipstick. She saw the commotion at the door and turned a sneer on her face, expecting to see a crying, pathetic wife. Her jaw dropped. Sarah glided past her. She didn't look at her. She didn't acknowledge her existence. She was a battleship, and Chloe was a piece of floating driftwood. The security team and Aris fell in behind her, a silent, unstoppable wedge moving toward the elevators. The lobby receptionist who had been about to tell Marcus his wife was here simply stared open-mouthed and pointed to the elevator bank. Up in the conference room, the ding of the private elevator echoed like a death knell. Marcus and Snyder backed away from the window. The door to the conference room opened. Sarah walked in, but she wasn't alone. Behind her was Aris, and behind him were 5 other people. A team of lawyers, men and women in suits that cost more than Snyder's car, all carrying thick, leather-bound portfolios. At the head of this legal army was a woman in her late 60s with iron-gray hair and eyes that could pierce steel. Snyder went white. He grabbed the back of a chair. "Oh my God," he whispered. That's Harriet Shaw. Harriet Shaw, the matriarch. The most feared, most respected, most expensive corporate litigator in the country. She didn't do divorces. She orchestrated corporate takeovers and dismantled empires. "Marcus," Sarah said. Her voice was not the whisper he was used to. It was clear, cold, and echoed with authority. "Rick, please sit." She didn't sit at the side of the table. She walked to the head of the chair Marcus had just vacated. Her team fanned out, taking their seats. Aris stood behind her arms, clasped, his eyes fixed on Marcus. "Sarah, what? What is this?" Marcus stammered, gesturing wildly. "Who are these goons? Did you win the lottery? What is going on?" Sarah looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. She saw a small, terrified man in a flashy suit. Harriet Shaw cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice like gravel and silk. "We are here to discuss the immediate and total dissolution of your assets, not Ms. Davenport Thompson's." Marcus looked confused. "Davenport, who's Davenport?" Sarah leaned forward. "It's my maiden name, Marcus. The one you never bothered to ask about. The one you never thought to Google." She smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all day, and it was the most terrifying thing Marcus Reed had ever seen. The Davenports, as in Davenport Holdings, the ones who own the bank that holds your company's delinquent loans. The room went utterly deathly silent. The silence in the room was so thick Marcus could feel it pressing in on his chest. His heart hammered a frantic, trapped bird. What are you talking about?" he said, his voice a pathetic squeak. My loans are with Pacific Sun Lending," Aris Thorne said, his voice smooth and deep. He stepped forward slightly, and for the first time Marcus noticed he was holding a slim, dark leather portfolio. A rather anonymous name, isn't it designed to be? Pacific Sun Lending is a third-tier subsidiary of Oceanic Financial Group, which is itself a shell corporation wholly owned by Thorne Capital. "And who," Marcus whispered, his eyes wide, "is Thorne Capital?" "I am," Aris said simply. "I am the CEO, and my firm, on behalf of our primary silent investor," he gave a slight, respectful nod toward Sarah, "has been acquiring your debt for the last 24 months. All $87 million of it. Rick Snyder." Marcus's lawyer made a small, strangled sound and sank into his chair. He looked at Harriet Shaw, who was watching the scene with the detached interest of a biologist studying a specimen. But, my company is worth 3 times that," Marcus yelled, his face turning a blotchy red. We're on the verge of a breakthrough. The K-12 software platform is a fantasy," Sarah said, her voice cutting through his panic. "It's vaporware, Marcus. Your tech doesn't work. Your lead engineers have been shopping their resumes for 6 months. Your company hasn't been solvent since last Christmas. How do you know that?" "Because," Sarah said, "I've been the one keeping it afloat. Every time you had a sudden influx of cash from a surprise angel investor. That was me. Every time a generous loan extension came through at the last second, that was my money funneled through Aris's firm. I did it because I was a fool. I did it because I still believed there was a man in there worth saving." She stood up, walking slowly around the table toward him. Her security team tensed, but Aris held up a hand. She stopped directly in front of Marcus. "And then Saturday night," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "you showed me exactly what you are. You didn't just want a divorce, Marcus. You wanted to humiliate me. You wanted to break me. You wanted to make me feel worthless so you could feel like a big man in your stupid rented car." "It's not rented," Marcus shrieked, the insult hitting a nerve. "I bought it." "Oh, we know," Harriet Shaw said, opening her own file. A stack of papers landed on the table with a heavy, final thud. "And that's where we move from a simple asset recovery to criminal fraud. Snyder put his head in his hands. The Lamborghini Aventador, Ms. Shaw, read, purchased for $480,000. The Bentley Continental GT, $310,000. The Richard Mille watch, $302,000. A down payment on a condominium at 100 Beacon Street in Miss Chloe Jensen's name, curiously for $1.2 million, all in the last 2 months. So what? Marcus blustered. I'm a CEO. I'm allowed to have nice things. You're allowed to buy them with your own money, Mr. Reed, Aris interjected. Not with funds fraudulently diverted from corporate assets. Not with money taken from joint accounts that were legally protected under your pre-nuptial agreement. The prenup! Marcus screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Sarah. The prenup! It protects me. It says what's mine is mine and what's hers is hers. You can't touch me. Sarah looked at him, and he could only describe the look as pity. Oh, Marcus, she said so softly, it was almost kind. You poor foolish man. Did you ever even read it, or did you just have Rick here? She flicked a glance at the sweating lawyer. Tell you it was a good idea. She walked back to her seat. Harriet, Ms. Shaw produced a second, much thinner document. The prenuptial agreement signed by both parties 8 years ago. You are correct, Mr. Reed. It states that all premarital assets and any income or businesses derived from those assets remain the sole property of the original party. A flicker of hope in Marcus's eyes. See, I told you Reed Dynamics is mine. Indeed, Harriet Shaw continued her smile thin, and Miss Davenport's blind trust valued at, she paused to check the number, $4.2 billion remains hers. You have no claim to it. The number $4.2 billion hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Marcus's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. But here is the clause you overlooked, Mr. Reed, Ms. Shaw said, tapping a paragraph. Clause 12b, the commingling contamination. It states that if any funds from one party's protected assets are used to purchase support or sustain the other party's assets, the protected party, in this case, Ms. Davenport, automatically gains a majority controlling interest in said asset proportionate to the investment. Marcus looked blank. Aris translated. She's been paying your company's bills for 2 years, Marcus. She didn't just invest in your company, she owns it. As of this morning, a forensic audit has confirmed her investment stake at 81%. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a resolution. This is a formal declaration from the new majority shareholder, Aris said. Effective immediately, you are removed as CEO of Reed Dynamics for cause. Your board seat is terminated. Your corporate accounts are frozen. Your company car, or cars rather, are to be seized and liquidated to begin paying back the creditors. The primary creditor being Ms. Davenport. Marcus looked at the paper. He looked at Sarah. He looked at Aris. You can't, he stammered. This is my life. No, Marcus. Sarah said, her voice final. It was my life you were playing with, and now the game is over. This isn't a divorce negotiation, Mr. Reed, Harriet Shaw said, stacking her papers. This is a recovery. We are calling the note, all of them. The $87 million in corporate debt is due in full by close of business today. Since the company is insolvent, we will be forced to liquidate it. You personally, as CEO, will be held liable for the fraudulent transfers. Snyder finally spoke, his voice a reedy whisper. Marcus, you need a criminal lawyer, not me. I can't. Oh, and one more thing, Sarah said, standing up. She walked to the window, looking down at the street, where her Rolls-Royce sat like a silent black predator. The gala, she said. The Friends of the Children Foundation. The one you were so eager to impress. So what about it? Marcus said, his voice hollow. My father, Robert Davenport, founded it 30 years ago. I've sat on the board anonymously since we were married. They were appalled by your behavior Saturday night, and by your guest. She turned to face him, her eyes as cold as the glass. As of this morning, your last major client, the Davenport Foundation, has terminated its 10-year, $50 million software contract with Reed Dynamics, citing the company's moral turpitude. That was the final blow. Not the debt, not the fraud, the public social execution. Marcus Reed didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply collapsed. He fell into his chair, a puppet with his strings cut his face the color of ash. He was a king who had just learned his throne was made of cardboard, and it was melting in the rain. Sarah didn't watch him fall. She had seen enough. She gathered her purse and nodded to her team. Harriet Harris, I believe we are finished here. Indeed, Miss Davenport, Harriet Shaw said, closing her briefcase with a satisfied snap. The rest of her legal team stood in unison, a silent, disciplined cohort. Wait, Marcus cried, his voice breaking. Sarah, please don't do this. I love you. It was a mistake. Chloe, she meant nothing. It was just a thing. Sarah paused at the door, her back to him. She didn't turn around. That's the part you'll never understand, Marcus, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. It wasn't that she meant nothing. It's that I meant nothing. You were willing to throw away 8 years, not for love, not even for passion, but for an ego boost. You wanted to feel powerful, so you tried to make me feel small. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. She turned just her head to look at him one last time. He was a broken man, weeping into his hands, his $300,000 watch glittering uselessly under the fluorescent lights. The prenup you were so proud of, she said. The one-time payment, $50,000. It will be wired to your personal account, what's left of it, by the end of the day. As you said, it's generous, really. She walked out the door. Aris and the legal team followed, leaving Rick Snyder alone with the hollow shell of his client. The elevator ride down was silent. The ding of the car arriving at the ground floor was punctuation, the end of a sentence 8 years long. The lobby was as they had left it, all chrome and glass. But the atmosphere had changed. The receptionist was pale and whispering frantically into her phone. And in the center of the lobby, on one of the black leather couches, was Chloe Jensen. She was no longer the smug, preening mistress. The triumphant grin was gone. She had clearly been watching the street, watching the Rolls-Royce and the Escalade, and the dawning horror had set in. She must have seen the security team, seen the arrival of Harriet Shaw's entire floor. She stood up as Sarah's group swept into the lobby, her face a mask of confusion and fear. Sarah! She called out, her voice high and desperate. What's going on? What did you do? Where's Marcus? Sarah stopped. Her entire team stopped with her. Aris took a half-step forward, ready to intervene, but Sarah put a hand on his arm. She turned to face the younger woman. Chloe was a child, really. A child playing a game she didn't understand, dressed in an adult's clothes Sarah knew that had been paid for with her own money. Marcus, Sarah said, her voice calm and even, is upstairs. He is indisposed. He's currently processing a great deal of new information. What information? What did you tell him? Chloe demanded, her panic rising. You can't do this. He's mine. We're in love. He's leaving you for me. Is that what he told you? Sarah asked, a flicker of genuine curiosity in her eyes. Did he tell you he was going to buy you a condo? Did he tell you that you'd be the new Mrs. Reed? That you'd have a life of galas and Lamborghinis? Yes. Chloe said, her confidence surging for a second. Yes, he did. He's a powerful man. He... Her voice trailed off as she saw the look on Sarah's face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was that same terrible pity. The condo at 100 Beacon Street, Sarah said, was purchased with fraudulent funds. The bank is seizing it this afternoon. The Lamborghini was a corporate asset. It's being towed as we speak. And Marcus is no longer a CEO. He is no longer wealthy. As of, she checked her own simple, elegant watch. About 10 minutes ago, Marcus Reed is unemployed under criminal investigation and has a net worth of exactly $50,000. Chloe's face crumpled. The blood drained from it, leaving her bleached hair and bright lipstick looking garish like a clown's makeup. No, she whispered. No, you're lying. You're a bitter old jealous wife. You're lying. I have no reason to lie, Miss Jensen, Sarah said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small white business card. She offered it to Chloe. This is Harriet Shaw's card, my lawyer, the woman who just finished dismantling your boyfriend's entire life. I'd advise you to call her. You are now a material witness in a federal fraud investigation. You accepted stolen goods, very large stolen goods. They will want their condo back. Chloe looked at the card as if it were a snake. She wouldn't take it. You bitch! She finally shrieked, her voice echoing in the marble lobby. You ruined everything. No, Ms. Jensen, Sarah replied, placing the card on the empty seat beside Chloe's purse. You and Marcus ruined yourselves. You just thought you were ruining me. Sarah turned and walked away. Just as she reached the revolving doors, the elevator dinged again. She didn't have to look. She heard the stumbling footsteps. She heard the broken animal sob. Chloe! Marcus roared, stumbling out of the elevator, his tie undone, his jacket missing. Chloe, you! This is your fault. You with your demands. The car. The condo. You pushed me. You did this. Chloe, seeing her white knight reduced to this raving, terrified lunatic, burst into tears. Me, it was you. You said she was nothing. You said it was easy. Get away from me. Marcus screamed, shoving past her. He literally ran out of the revolving doors and stopped dead. He was on the sidewalk. In front of him, a tow truck was hooking up his brand-new deep blue Bentley. No, you can't, I own that, he bellowed, running at the tow truck driver. Sarah's security team, the two men from the Escalade, materialized instantly. They didn't touch Marcus. They simply stepped between him and the driver, two human walls of immovable muscle. Sir, you need to step back, one of them said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Marcus, defeated, slid down the side of a planter, his face in his hands, as his last remaining symbol of power was unceremoniously hauled away. Sarah watched it all through the glass, the whole pathetic tragic opera. Aris opened the door of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. The spirit of ecstasy hood ornament gleamed. Where to Miss Davenport? Aris asked, as if none of it had happened. Sarah looked at the wreckage of her former life, her husband sobbing on the curb, his mistress crying in the lobby, his car being towed. She felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt light. She got into the car, the door closing with a silent bank vault thud. The airport, Aris, she said, buckling her seatbelt. I believe our new office in Singapore needs an in-person visit. And please, she added, find me the best spa in the city. I'd like to book a very long day. It's already been arranged. Aris smiled, getting into the front passenger seat. The Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled away from the curb, its engine a faint whisper. It didn't need to roar to be heard. It glided past the tow truck, past the weeping man on the sidewalk, and merged seamlessly into traffic, disappearing like a ghost. The flight to Singapore was 18 hours, but for Seraphina Davenport, it felt like the first deep breath she'd taken in a decade. She wasn't in first class, a stuffy compartment where new money, like Marcus, vied for an attendant's attention. She was in the residence of a private conversion A380, a jet chartered by Thorne Capital. The Davenport contingency had been thorough. She spent the first 2 hours in a rainfall shower, washing away the grime of the law office, the scent of the gala, the psychic residue of Marcus Reed. She emerged wrapped in a plush robe and found Aris in the lounge area, a laptop open, a satellite phone to his ear. He saw her and ended his call. "Everything is handled, Seraphina," he said, offering her a glass of water. "The locks on the main house have been changed. Your personal effects, the ones you wanted, are being packed and shipped to storage. The rest, well, that's part of the asset seizure." "And him?" she asked. She found she couldn't say his name. Mr. Reed attempted to access his corporate credit cards. They were, of course, declined. He is currently at his lawyer's office, what's left of it. It seems Mr. Snyder is in a great deal of trouble himself for advising his client to commit overt fraud. And Chloe, Aris's face was impassive. Ms. Jensen was more pragmatic than her partner. She contacted Ms. Shaw's office from the lobby as you suggested. She has already agreed to testify and to return several expensive gifts. A Patek Philippe watch, a set of diamond earrings in exchange for a lesser criminal complaint. It seems her loyalty was as shallow as her ambition. "Of course it was," Sarah said, sipping her water. "They were a perfect match." She sat across from him. The cabin was silent, just the low hum of the engines. "You knew, didn't you, Aris, all these years? You saw what he was." Aris Thorne looked at the woman he had known since she was a child. He had been her father's most trusted man, and when Robert Davenport, in his arrogance and hurt, had cast out his only daughter, Aris had been forced to make his own choice. He'd chosen Sarah. "We all saw it, Seraphina," he said gently. "Your father, me. We saw a charismatic, ambitious man who was dazzled by the idea of you but terrified of the reality of you. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a possession, a quiet one. And you let me do it," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a question. "You were in love," Aris said. "Or you were in love with the idea of being loved for just you. You wanted a normal life. You wanted to build something with a man who wasn't impressed by your name. Your father's ultimatum. It forced your hand. You had to prove him wrong." "And I failed," she whispered. "No," Aris said, leaning forward. "You didn't. You gave him every chance. You gave him your time, your loyalty, your own money. You tried to build him into the man you thought he was. It wasn't you who failed Seraphina. It was him. He was given a queen, and he treated her like a pawn. He was too small to stand next to you, so he spent 8 years trying to cut you down to his size." He tapped his laptop. "While you were just a wife, you were also, through me, the silent partner in Thorne Capital. Your little inheritance." Sarah nodded. "The one from my grandmother. It was $150 million. In the 8 years you've been married, your portfolio under our management has grown, substantially. You weren't just paying his bills, Seraphina. You were building an empire in the shadows. Your father, he would be apoplectic if he knew you were better at this than he is." A small, genuine smile touched her lips. "He'll never know." "He might," Aris said. "When we land in Singapore, you have a meeting. That's the real reason for this trip. It's not just to escape." "A meeting with who?" "Davenport Holdings, Asia Pacific." Aris said, a glint in his eye. "Your father's bored. It seems they're in trouble. A hostile takeover bid is being orchestrated. They're vulnerable. Their stock has plummeted. A hostile takeover by who? A new aggressive and very mysterious American firm. They've been buying up stock anonymously for months. They call themselves Thorne Capital. Sarah's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Aris, you didn't. I took what you taught me, Seraphina. You always said my firm was just acquiring debt. But the real play, the Davenport play, is to acquire control. Your husband's company was just target practice, a little test of our legal framework. He turned the laptop around. It was a stock chart. Davenport Holdings Davin was in a nosedive, and a single massive buy order had just been placed. Your father's board is panicking, Aris said. They don't know who is behind the takeover. They've called an emergency meeting. They're flying to Singapore to meet with their largest Asian investors. But why am I going? Because Seraphina Aris said they're not meeting with their investors. They're meeting with us. You are the takeover. You're not just taking back your life, Ms. Davenport. You're about to take back your entire family's company. From your father. The shock was a jolt, stronger than the gala, stronger than the law office. This wasn't just a divorce. This wasn't just revenge. This was a coronation. He'll fight me, she said, her mind racing. He'll lose, Aris replied. He's an old lion, and he's been asleep for years. You've been in the arena. He thinks you're still the girl who ran off with the pool boy. He has no idea who you've become. Seraphina looked out the window at the endless expanse of clouds, 50,000 feet below. She had spent 8 years in the shadows believing she was weak, but the shadow had been a chrysalis, and the woman who had emerged wasn't the one who had gone in. Get me the file, Aris, she said, her voice firm. All of it. By the time we land, I want to know everything. I want to know every weakness, every strength, every loyal board member, and everyone we need to fire. Aris Thorne smiled. It's already on your tablet. He dimmed the lights. Rest, Seraphina. Tomorrow, you buy your father's company. The meeting was held in a private wood-panelled boardroom at the top of the Marina Bay Sands, overlooking the entire city. The air was thick with tension and the smell of old, frightened money. The board of Davenport Holdings was assembled, 7 men all in their late 60s or 70s, and at the head of the table, his face a mask of thunder, was Robert Davenport. He was a lion still, but an old one. His mane was white, his eyes rheumy, but his presence still filled the room. He had no idea why he was here. He only knew that an anonymous entity, Thorne Capital, had bought a 45% controlling stake in his company and had demanded this meeting. This is an outrage! He was booming just as the doors opened. I want a name who dares to play these games with my company when I find out who's behind this. The doors glided open. Harriet Shaw, who had flown in on a separate jet, entered first. Gentlemen, thank you for assembling so quickly. Shaw, Robert roared. What is the meaning of this? Are you representing these vultures? I am, she said. Please be seated. I will not. Then you will be removed, a new voice said. Aris Thorne stepped into the room, flanked by the same 2 security professionals from the Kelleher building. Their presence was an immediate chilling statement. Robert Davenport's eyes widened. Thorne, you, after all these years, you're the one. The snake I took in. I am merely an employee, Robert, Aris said, his voice cold. Like you, serving at the pleasure of the owner. The owner, Robert said, confused. Who is the owner? The doors opened one last time. Seraphina Davenport walked in. She was wearing a dress the color of blood, tailored severe and powerful. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was calm. The room, for the second time in 3 days, went utterly deathly silent. Robert Davenport looked as if he had seen a ghost. His face went from red to white to a mottled, sickly purple. "You," he whispered. "You little girl." "Hello, Father," Sarah said. She walked to the empty chair at the other head of the table directly opposite him. This is a joke," one of the board members stammered. "Robert, this is you're estranged." "She is nothing," Robert roared, slamming his fist on the table. "She is a reed. She is a disgraced, disowned. What is this? Seraphina? A game? Did your pathetic husband finally bankrupt you? Are you here for a handout?" Sarah looked at him, and for the first time she didn't see a terrifying titan. She saw a lonely, angry old man, clinging to the one thing he had left his rage. "My husband," Sarah said, "is a non-entity. The name Reed will be legally removed from my own by the end of the week. And I am not here for a handout, Father. I'm here for a buyout." She nodded to Aris. Aris placed a single file in front of every board member. As of 0400 this morning, Thorne Capital, on behalf of its sole investor, Ms. Seraphina Davenport, has acquired 51.2% of all outstanding shares of Davenport Holdings. This meeting is not a negotiation. It is a formality. The sound of 7 old men shuffling paper was the only sound. "It's a hostile takeover," Robert whispered, his eyes locked on his daughter. My own flesh and blood. Was it not hostile when you told me to choose between my life and my family?" Sarah asked, her voice quiet but carrying. "Was it not hostile when you cut me off, hoping I would fail so I would come crawling back?" "I did it to protect you," he yelled. "From him. From that parasite. And you were right," Sarah said, shocking him into silence. "You were right. He was a parasite. He was a weak, greedy, foolish man. But you didn't try to protect me. You tried to control me. You gave me an ultimatum, believing I would choose your money over my own life." "You were wrong." She stood up, placing her hands on the back of her chair. "For 8 years I have been quiet. I built my own life. I also built my own company, a company that is now larger, more agile and more profitable than this one. This hostile takeover isn't hostile at all. It's a rescue." She looked at the other board members. "Davenport Holdings is failing. You've all been propping up my father's ego, agreeing to his outdated ideas, his refusal to modernize. You're losing $200 million a quarter. You were 3 months from insolvency. I'm not here to destroy this company. I'm here to save it." She looked back at her father. "As of this moment," she said, her voice ringing with the authority he himself had taught her, "the board is dissolved. I am installing Mr. Thorne as interim CEO. Ms. Shaw will oversee a full independent audit. And you, Father, you are retired." Robert Davenport stared at her. The anger was gone. There was only a vast, empty shock. "All of it," he murmured, "all of it. Gone to her." "No," Sarah said. She walked around the table until she was standing next to him. The security team tensed. She waved them off. She put a hand on her father's shoulder. He was shaking. "Not gone, Father," she said, her voice softening for the first time. "It's safe. I didn't do this to punish you. I did this to save us." She looked at him, daughter to father. "You were right about Marcus. I was wrong. It took me 8 years to see it. But you were wrong about me. You thought I was weak. You thought I needed a man, you or him, to tell me what to do. You've been wrong for 8 years." Robert Davenport looked up, and for the first time he saw her. Not the rebellious girl, not the boring wife, but the woman she had become. a woman of steel and shadow, a woman who had single-handedly outplayed them all. He saw a Davenport. A single hard tear rolled down his cheek. He nodded. Once. Sarah squeezed his shoulder, then stood tall. "Gentlemen," she said to the room, "the new era of Davenport Holdings begins now. You can either be a part of it, or you can join my father in retirement. The choice is yours. You have 1 hour to decide." She turned, and with Oris and Harriet Shaw flanking her, she walked out of the room, leaving a stunned silence and the undeniable palpable shift of power in her wake. She didn't look back. She was already focused on the future. 6 months later, Seraphina Davenport stood on the terrace of her Singapore headquarters. The newly formed Davenport Thorne empire was thriving, streamlined by her vision and Aris's management. The consolidation was complete, and she had, even after a difficult reconciliation, earned the respect of her retired father. The debris of her former life had been cleared. Marcus Reed was in a minimum security prison, serving a sentence for fraud, his entire empire reduced to a small cell and a prison-taught business class. Chloe Jensen, pragmatic as ever, had testified against him, and was now parlaying her 15 minutes of infamy on a D-list reality TV show. The most poignant change was the house. The home where she had been a boring wife was sold, its proceeds donated. It had been purchased by the Friends of the Children Foundation and renamed Sarah's House, a sanctuary for at-risk young women. She had turned her prison into a refuge. A soft ding announced Aris, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "A toast," he said, handing one to her. "The final papers just came through. Marcus has relinquished all claims. The last thread is cut." Sarah looked at the bubbles, a perfect mirror of the city lights. She thought of the flat, stale champagne she'd held at the gala a lifetime ago. She raised her glass. "No Aris," she said, her voice clear and bright. "Not to the end." She turned, looking out at the endless glittering horizon. To the beginning. And so Seraphina's story ends, not with a broken heart, but with a balanced ledger. She didn't get revenge. She got justice. She reminded the world that the quietest people in the room are often the most powerful, and that underestimating someone is a debt that always gets paid with interest. Marcus and Chloe learned the hard way that when you build your life on lies, the foundation will always crack. Seraphina, on the other hand, built an empire from the rubble. What did you think of Seraphina's epic takedown? Was it too much, or was it exactly what Marcus deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and ideas are what fuel this channel. If you enjoyed this, please like this video and share it with someone who loves a good story of justice. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for listening.